Thank you. We're very happy to be here. And our talk this morning is called The Wife, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I'm dusting the inside of the attic wardrobe, the one that came with this ancient house. You might think that the inside of the wardrobe wouldn't matter so much because the doors are closed, but it does matter. The room is virtually empty, but it too needs dusting. That's what he says, and I want him to be happy with me. I spend a lot of time making sure he's happy with me, because my body and my soul know what happens when he's not satisfied with my performance. He has never wondered if I'm happy with him. It's sort of like how we are with spicy food. I love spicy food, but he doesn't, and since I'm the cook, I accommodate him. It's better for me not to have exactly what I want. I've learned that. The price for me to enjoy Vindaloo is no longer one I'm willing to pay. Not only did he make a scene at the restaurant, but the recriminations lasted for days. Everything he ate was better than Vindaloo, and he laughed about me with his parents when we visited them. He rants about work. His boss, Rebecca, is always correcting his drafts, as though he doesn't know how to write a report. And he has been there for longer than she has. How did she ever get promoted before him? That's sexism for you right there, he says. I absorb his anger and frustration because he takes little things so hard. And if I can't talk him down from the little things, God help us when the big things hit. I've learned to turn off the parts of my soul that hurt when he's upset. I just wish it didn't turn off every part of me. I don't laugh so much anymore. Sometimes I think he should just laugh off what happens at work, but it's never funny to him. Sex makes him feel better, and it's good for him to feel better, even if it's not what I want. He wants me to dress up like a flight attendant, so I do. But that theater feels empty. I might have even liked to dress up once, to bring laughter and play into sex, but he kept it serious. All he wanted was to demean an hourly employee, not to play. With him, there is no escape from seriousness. He thinks everything is life or death, and around him it is. It's the same with dusting this attic wardrobe, with keeping the house clean. I would feel more invested in a clean house if we had people over, but no one seems to want to visit us anymore. He says our problems are nobody's business but our own. Once he noticed cobwebs behind the TV, and he yelled so loudly about the house being a pigsty that the neighbors knocked on the door to make sure everything was all right. I had to go to the door to tell them everything was fine. I just made sure my long hair covered my face while I was talking. I clean the house defensively. I clean to protect myself. Sometimes I think about my mother, whose spotless house brought her joy and brought her friends into our kitchen. The most I can get from a clean house is not to be noticed by him. When I follow his script perfectly, I become invisible. That is my peace. Dusting the attic wardrobe every Thursday, there should be no surprises. But this time, as I lift up an old fur coat that always falls off the hanger, a largish yellow envelope wrapped in string falls to the floor of the wardrobe. I drop it in the dustpan on the floor and continue to organize, dust, and protect my peace. It was heavier than I suspected. It takes me a little longer than usual to finish dusting this room because the bruises on my arms are sore. But I don't work outside the home, so I have all the time in the world. When I finish cleaning the rest of the third floor, I take the heavy dustpan down to the kitchen trash. Dumped into the trash, I finally notice the yellowed bundle, and for the first time, I give it my attention. Reaching into the trash, I lift the bundle and take it over to the freshly wiped kitchen table. The cleaning is done, and he won't be home for hours. The envelope is surprisingly heavy and thick. I picked at the frayed string with my bitten fingernails. What needs to be protected so carefully from being seen? My first thought was money or jewels. After all, there were grandmother's jewels in Ingrid Bergman's gaslit attic. Maybe with enough money and jewels, I could buy a house where no one could find me. The envelope smelled like a musty attic, but tinged with a cloying aroma I could only just smell. When I turned it over, handwritten on the other side, it simply says, maps. Who needs maps to get out of a wardrobe? Maybe I do. Maybe the ache to leave wasn't something I just had to live with and push down forever. Maybe this mysterious envelope could show me a way to leave. The gift of its being addressed from I knew not where, just to me, made it seem like a precious gift, or like a hope that I didn't want to disappear, like the others. Slowly, I turned it over, looked at it from all sides. It was not only thoroughly taped closed, it was tied up with kitchen twine, the sort you use for tying up a roast. It was tied very tightly, and my fingernails hurt pulling at the twine. When finally freed, it sat there quietly in front of me on the table, still taped. I didn't want to tear this gift of the envelope, so I went to get a knife. Of course, I had to fish a key out of my pocket first. The sharp knives are all locked in a secure metal box, and I'm the only one with a key. He's tried to get the key from me many times, but I've been lucky so far. The knife opened the envelope easily, and I gently eased the contents onto the kitchen table. Outside of the envelope, in a heap, there seemed to be no sense to the collection of things. I'm used to looking for patterns that make sense, that keep peace. There were some photographs here and there, and paper-clipped into a few separate packets, some handwritten pages torn along one edge, maybe from a journal. There were lots of stray sheets in various colors of ink. There were some of what appeared to be legal documents. A bank book, almost unused. A pocket-sized reporter's notebook, which, upon flipping through, appears to be only quotations and observations. A full bottle of pills, different colors and sizes, as though they had been carefully collected at every opportunity. 2 more formal typewritten documents with title pages, one titled The Seal Woman's Revenge, and the other, The Wife, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When the envelope was empty, I turned it upside down, and clinking out onto the table, a thin gold wedding band and a little stick, worn smooth and ink-stained. The photographs attracted me first. One was of a family group, looking somber. 2 children, a woman, and a figure with its face scratched out. They were standing in front of a big house with a striking wraparound porch. The porch took up so much space that I skipped a beat when I realized it was my own house, now without any porches. I always loved the idea of time without purpose, enjoyed on summer porches. But I didn't recognize the stony-faced family as the one from whom we had purchased the house. They must have lived there decades ago. It was hard to be sure, since the picture was so small, and the face of the man seemed to have been scratched out with a pin. I had never seen the people before, but the woman looked familiar. Maybe it was the eyes. I certainly recognized the pearls and high heels. Mine are higher. Eager to learn more about her, I wanted to read something I assumed she'd written. Looking over the typed and titled documents, the word revenge spoke to me in a way that the moralizing Narnia knockoff did not. So I reached for the tale of the Seal Woman. The typewritten cover page was in large letters, but the author listed merely as the wife. So I took the rusty paperclip off Revenge of the Seal Woman and settled in at the kitchen table.
The Seal Woman's Revenge by The Wife. I might be a selkie. For those of you whose mother didn't read you Irish fairy tales when you were a small child, a selkie is a seal woman. She is infinitely desirable, so desirable that she must be literally stolen like covetable property. Let me explain. The seals who like to feel free, even freer than the sea, sometimes take off their skins and lie on the rocks to sun themselves. I guess it would get cold, always being in the sea. But they have such thick skins, you'd think that would be enough. Maybe it's not about the cold. Maybe it's about the erotic beauty of salt air striking naked flesh, the surrender to vulnerability. The catch, though, is that if, while the seal skin is off, a man steals it, he has control over the selkie until she can get the skin back. I always thought the saddest, strangest part of the story was that the selkie longed desperately to go home. She haunted the shore. Yet she was a good mother to her children and a good wife to her husband abductor. And why would the man just hide the skin? Why wouldn't he burn it to keep her forever? Would she die if her skin were burned? Or maybe the loss of the hope of returning to the sea one day would be enough to kill the wildness in her that the man loved and now controlled, turning the Selkie into a run-of-the-mill mother and wife. As a child, I could not see the allure of danger. I could see only a terrifying loss when the mother went back to her true ocean home. She always did. In some stories, she told the children she would miss them, and that she loved them, and that she loved her husband abductor, but she had to return to the sea. In at least one story, she turns 5 of her children into rocks and swims away with the other 2 under each arm. How did she choose? My mother, the reader of fairy tales, fell from grace in my eyes when she did not in fact escape her mundane reality to return to a glorious destiny, but instead left me for a wealthy, childless man. She did say goodbye and that she loved me, but it was abandonment, not transcendence. I guess I knew why she left, but it was the coward's way. I strongly suspect that I'm a Selkie. As with all good fairy tales, I saw the story differently as I matured. I was young and married, bewildered by precious alien babies when I began searching for my skin. I can't swim, but that didn't matter, because nature would take over once the skin was on. After all, a seal couldn't walk like a woman, could it? So once I had the skin on, I would slip through the water and be truly at home. Some additional proof of my Selkiehood is that I have to not laugh out loud when the idea of mating for life, of loving someone forever, struck me. Internally, I find the concept so amusing that it's hard for me to keep a straight face if the matter is raised in conversation. But people do take the concept of mating for life seriously. Oh, they do. And so I pretend to also. I pretend while I'm searching surreptitiously all around the untidy house for my real skin. He tricked me into staying here, into being a mother and wife, although he is mostly kind to me, and I suppose I love him in a way. I love the children more than I can say. But if I found the skin, I would be gone before the children could open their pouty pink lips to protest, before they could blink their saucer-wide, moist blue eyes. In some version of the story, the Selkie takes the time to say goodbye to her daughter. I would not take the time. I'm definitely a Selkie. One day I do find the skin, in a rotted cardboard box in a cobwebby corner of the garage. It looks kind of like canvas, but then so do seals. When I put it on, it doesn't cling to my body. But of course it wouldn't. It would have to be wet to do that, wet with salt water. The canvas encloses me like a sack. I emerge breathless, dusty, but I can picture exactly how it will mold to me when I submerge, and suddenly I will be streamlined and graceful and free. I thought I would be afraid, maybe tentatively step into the shallows and then put the skin on, see the change happen gradually. But then it seemed like a shameful lack of faith, too much like my mother, and I wanted to prove to the magical world I know is out there that I am ready to be received. Not the false steps my mother took, but real steps towards the divine. I drive for miles and hours, and finally reach the ocean. I rent a light, plastic kayak, bright yellow, and paddle clumsily out to sea. I've never paddled before and keep going in circles at first before I get far enough out to feel that I am part of the wildness and not close enough for humanity to pull me back again. I take off my clothes and feel the sea air strike my skin, erotically vulnerable. I put the canvas over my head, It smells chokingly musty and also like release, and I topple sideways off the yellow kayak into my new home.
Was that the answer? The woman so yearned for wildness, the wildness of a selkie, that she was drawn to one wild plunge into the white horses. Do I even remember wildness? It's certainly not when he lets loose, gets drunk at parties, and gets handsy with my sister. That's just what he wants to do and thinks he deserves. But wildness is not the predator lion, strong and unafraid. It could even be the lion cubs, tumbling together in a ball, play wrestling. Maybe even little prey animals are wild, less focused on the hunt, less one thought on their minds than predators. Squirrels chasing each other through the branches. Maybe play is wild. That's why he would never play charades, only chess at his chess club with a worthy opponent. Play without rules, that is wild. Diving with abandon off the boat into the surf. One last wildness. I flipped through the pictures. Contrary to my first impression, they were not all of the same family, just the same house. Gradually, the pictures turned to color instead of black and white, and the configurations of family varied within certain parameters. There was always a wife and a husband, but various numbers of children, or in some cases, no children at all. Hairstyles and fashions changed. The facial expressions and the postures remained consistent, until I reached the final photograph. In that one, I couldn't tell anything about the facial expression because it was one of the back of a woman who was running. She wore tight workout clothing. Her posture, however, was neither wary, nor afraid, nor angry. She looked free. Her shoulders were back. The muscles in her calves bulged as she ran. I wondered who had taken the picture. Looking at one of the handwritten journal entries, I saw that it was a list of money accumulated, of supplies hidden. 5 oranges, they will last longer. The price of a train ticket, so far above the amount of money accumulated, but it was clearly a work in progress. Diapers. The words wedding ring, $1,000, or best offer. The next journal entry was recipes. My God, the number of recipes. And all attributed to someone. Mother's apple pie, Betty's easy rise bread, Georgia's lemon rosemary chicken. So many flowery hands, so many nourished souls. I imagined the joy in a free kitchen, even at the mistakes. The sludgy cornbread that the children laughed about until they cried, but ate anyway. Looking back at the pile of things poured on the table, I saw the other typed title page, The Wife, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Why so Narnia? I hated the way the lion saved the day. There are no Prince Charmings. As much as I dislike the Narnia stories, I am intrigued by the switch of the title from lion to wife. I could never relate to the heavy-handed Jesus lion, or the pure, uninspired evil of the witch, for whom always winter but never Christmas was the worst thing she could imagine. Nevertheless, I could relate to the concept of wife. It was what I had signed up for. He has it in writing, after all. I thought of a camel in the desert, lumbering hopelessly under an immense burden. I want to read about another wife, to see if we are all the same. The title page again only identifies the author as the wife.
The Wife, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by the wife. The wife was frustrated because she couldn't find the curling iron and she needed to look her best. It was date night. And if she didn't look just so, everything would be ruined. She was emptying out the wardrobe in their vast bedroom, throwing makeup, curlers, shoes, hairspray, all behind her onto the bed, searching in vain for the metal rod that would transform her limp hair into bouncy, attractive curls. She was running out of time. Running down to the kitchen, she shouted,
"Miss Bishop, I need your help. I've looked everywhere for my curling iron, and I have to be ready in 30 minutes.
I keep asking you to call me Bridget. And why do you need the curling iron?
I just said I'm going out and I have to look my best. It's Thursday, date night.
Bridget slowly closed the oven door, pushing her beautiful hair, long and gray, out of her eyes, leaving a smudge of flour on her somewhat pointy nose. The wife always thought Miss Bishop was beautiful. She did not look young. Her weathered face was wrinkled and tan, and if not a full smile, she seemed always to have a spark in her eyes. Her expression seemed to say that she knew there was something about the life in that house that was only theater, a copy of a copy. Bridget looked patiently at the wife, sharing a little smile. "But dearie, your hair is lovely."
He doesn't think it's pretty like this at all. I don't dare show my real face. He's always saying how beautiful that young actress with the curls is.
In her consternation, the wife knocked the bowl where the yeast was proofing off the counter. It shattered on the tile floor. "Never mind," said Bridget, turning to grab what she always called her trusty broom. Calmly, she swept up the broken bowl and put it in the bin, and she wiped the floor with the rag, saying, "If it means that much to you, let's go look for the curling iron." When they got to the master bedroom, Bridget went straight to the wardrobe.
I looked there already.
Without pausing or looking back at the wife, Bridget slowly turned over the mess the wife had made at the bottom of the wardrobe. Under a fancy black winter coat that the wife had knocked off a hanger, she turned around with the iron in her hand. "Here it is."
Miss Bishop, I swear you're magic.
Bridget laughed, a high cackling sound that always made the wife laugh too. It was such an honest, fearless laughter that the wife was easily swept up in its carefree joy. And for a while, the two of them stood there in safety, laughing, leaning on each other. The wife loved these moments together, but she knew it made her husband uneasy. "And how will this make you pretty? You're already so beautiful."
Nobody thinks I'm pretty like this but you. Yet when I make myself up, everyone is attracted to me. I am never alone, and Dick is so proud.
"How can they even see you under all that paint and hair and eyelashes? Look at me. All you see is my face, wrinkled, old, and starring my pointy nose."
But you're different. You don't mind being alone. You've never been married.
There are lots of ways of being alone, dearie, even when you're married. And lots of ways of not being alone without being a man's wife. And you know how close I am to those friends I call my three sisters, who own that lunch and tea room called the Three Gossips. They may not be my real sisters, but we always feel each other's emotions, especially in the kitchen. The atmosphere of the Three Gossips is so warm and thick with aromas of fresh bread, all sorts of bread baking, and cauldrons of soup with real hearts simmering. No wonder, after it closes, I like joining my three sisters, talking long into the night. By first light we have left, but with my sisters at the Gossips is always where I am at home. And besides, dearie, you love the walnut honey bread.
Your weird sisters scare me, and they're black cats too.
Your husband scares me.
Miss Bishop, why?
But the wife had an uneasy feeling that she knew why. Dick had never liked Bridget. He spoke privately of it to his wife, saying he thought Bridget might be stealing, and that he didn't like the way she looked at him. He had said several times he would like to let Bridget go and hire some help who knew their place.
Oh no, Dick will be here in 10 minutes to pick me up. You know how he gets when I'm not ready.
The wife flew up the stairs, with Bridget following right behind. The curling iron was plugged in while the wife pulled on the tights that hugged her curves, though she knew that when she wore those tights, Dick's hands would be all over her, no matter how many people were around, more maybe if there were people around. He was so proud of how she looked when she wore certain things. She was rushing, and she wasn't careful enough, and in her haste, the hot iron pressed too close to her face, leaving a blistering burn on her forehead. Cursing, the wife started dabbing makeup over the burn, hoping Dick wouldn't notice the imperfection.
Tell me more about your sisters.
Blinking quickly, said the wife, blinking quickly so the tears from the pain of her burn didn't make her mascara run. "We wear clown noses," said Bridget, some taking the makeup from the wife's hands and instead producing a bottle of salve from her mysterious bag. Immediately, the pain began to subside.
Why in the world do you wear red clown noses?
Bridget's eyes sparkled. We wear them when we pretend to be perfect wives. We say the things that we think men would most want to hear with our most sincere voices and expression, but when we wear the clown noses, we laugh until we ache. The wife pushed her bangs down just so, to hide the burn. Satisfied, she turned from the mirror.
Bridget, sometimes I think you are the only free person I know.
And from her mysterious bag, Bridget offered the wife a red clown nose. The wife laughed with delight and was just calming, but quickly stuffed the red foam into her pocket when she heard her husband's key in the door. Bridget slipped out and headed silently to the servants' stairs. Dick didn't like it when the wife and Bridget appeared to be getting close. When Dick came up the stairs, the wife could tell by his tread that he had had a bad day. "You're not ready?" he said loudly. "For Christ's sake, why don't you do anything? You do nothing all day except spend my money, and you still can't manage to be on time for dinner?"
I'm almost ready.
The wife was turning away to adjust herself.
I look so pretty tonight, don't I? I just need one more thing.
And she slipped the red nose from her pocket to her nose and turned to face her husband. She had been hit by her husband many times, too many to count, but she was not expecting the crack of his hand across her face. She fell to the floor, curled in a ball as he continued to slap and kick her, ranting, "You can't be serious for 1 minute, can you? How you look is a reflection on me. When will you get that through your head? Still, you think you're funny." When the blows stopped raining down on her, she heard him say, "Fix yourself, we're still going out." And then his footsteps, walking away. When she uncurled herself and rose battered from the floor, she saw two things: that she hadn't unplugged the curling iron, and that Bridget was standing in the doorway. The wife walked unsteadily to the curling iron, but instead of unplugging it, she pulled the gauzy white curtains from the window and piled them up on top of the hot metal. They began to smoke right away. The wife heaped some paper around the curtains and then put her cans of hairspray with the warning not to allow near heat or flame on the pile. Bridget watched her, nodded her approval. Together they walked silently down the servant stairs and out of the house. The house was beginning to glow. Dick was beginning to shout, but by that time they were arm in arm and far away.
Now that's a happy ending. The wife goes down the staircase, and with any luck, Dick goes up in smoke. The seal woman bore her burden until she destroyed herself, and the wife destroyed her abuser and his house. This time, I thought of a caged lion, destroying everything, not of a wife destroying herself. Settling back, I turned the pages of the book of quotations and comments. Something caught my eye. Toward the top and middle of one of the pages was a dot drawn in crayon, a large red dot, and under it was written, "Could the little red nose point me the way to leave?" Was this Bridget's red nose? The little clown noses she and her sisters used to triumph over the hollow theater of the perfect wife and the abusive husband? That nose was a hopeful thought, until I remembered that even in that story, it drew a beating down on the wife. And I know if I tried it, he might kill me with rage. Everything is serious for him. There is no play. Next to the crayon red dot, which I now knew to be a nose, there was a single sentence under a reminder to someone of where it came from. Margaret Fuller, 1844.
This irritated the girls, as all eccentricity does the world in general, more than vice and malignity.
This irritated the girls, as all eccentricity does the world in general, more than vice or malignity? Could that be true? Are people more irritated by eccentricity than they are by vice and things that are wrong? They are fine with right and wrong, and critique. Oh, how I have learned not to argue with him. He always has an answer, and nothing ever changes. He wants to argue, and will listen to what I want to be different, but then it is either impossible because women are made to serve, or he accepts the change and nothing changes. I still survive by disappearing. And eccentricity, the red nose, that way lies more danger. The red nose calls out fury from the fragile social structure enforced with quiet violence by every one of us for the uninterrupted privilege of men. In the pile of things poured out from the envelope, there were 4 scattered sheets, apparently torn from a notebook. They seem to all have been written with a fountain pen in the same purple ink. They aren't numbered, but after turning them around a bit, they do form a continuous script, with even a title at the top of the opening page. Nothing's hidden. No author is indicated. Checking the time, he is still not coming home for a few hours. I settled back at the table to read.
Nothing's hidden. I was out with the children. The cider mill was going to close in a week or so. Fall harvest was coming to an end. So I drove Judy and Anna to the old New England town named, philosophically enough, Mystic. The cider mill produced fresh, unfermented, and definitely unpreserved cider, and it was the best ever. Once in amazement, a younger Anna had said quietly with almost reverence, "It tastes like apples." And I never thought of a better way to describe that thick sweet than liquefied apples. The apples were crushed and spread out on layer after layer of wooden slats. The crushed apples, skins, flesh, cores, stems, leaves too, in a thick, slow apple stream oozed out of a large, flexible tube, which came, I suppose, from some crushing operation above the ceiling. One by one, a slat was covered with a blanket, filled with from the large tube with apple mush, the blanket folded up, another slat put on top until it reached almost to the ceiling. The cold room opened to the outside, but over by the big steam engine, which was the cider power, pressing the layers of crushed apples until cider poured out the sides of their rising slats and blankets. Over there by the steam engine, it was warm, and we usually stood there with the other visitors near this old steam engine, part of a complex creation of liquid joy. But this time something was wrong with the machine. The big belt must have had some big belt roll in this complex creation. It wasn't right. It was making little jerky jolts, not spinning smoothly. That was when we noticed. The woman in blue jean overalls, who always looked at the girls with a nearly smile and had little cups of popcorn hidden away to give to children, that woman was not here. And her charge, the steam engine, was not well, and it was starting to clunk and shake, making us all a little scared. Anna and Judy moved closer to me, right up against my sides. The tower of crushed apples and blankets was no longer pouring out fresh cider. The whole process was slowing down. After a while, standing around getting worried, a 40-ish man on the other side of the tower started moving towards the steam engine and, at quite a volume to all of us, said that he had been teaching the design of steam engines in college for 5 years and could diagram their parts and relations in his sleep. He would find the something or other valve and calm the engine, now becoming quite enervated. But he couldn't decide what to toggle or what to turn. Approaching a lever, he lost his nerve and pulled back, reached for a knob. He cried out, it was so hot. So, on a scrap of paper, he drew that diagram he could draw in his sleep, but it didn't seem to help him, even though he proudly said he had examined students on that diagram every spring for the last few years. And the clunking was getting louder, his voice slower but adamant. "The diagram is correct. I just don't understand." And so we were back to standing around quietly, so silent that every steam engine clunk was amplified. It shook the floor. Now Judy and Anna were each hugging one of my legs, and everyone was worried, although somehow not running out of the building. Just outside the wooden structure, a pickup truck splashed to a stop, and a pair of blue jean overalls jumped out and marched confidently through the puddle. But her face was stern, and there wasn't the whisper of a smile. Not saying a word, pulling on her serious gloves, she stepped over the chain keeping us from approaching the engine and started jiggling this and shaking that. An oil can came in handy, and a solid whack from a stick got the big band to stop jolting. Finally, she used a wrench to adjust 2 bolts on either side of the top of the engine. The belt started moving a little faster. Steam was hissing out from here, making the sounds of functioning well. The great tower of blankets on slats started creaking, and finally cider poured out faster and faster from the sides of the blankets. As she turned around, she said she had to run off to help her mother, who lived 3 houses away and had fallen, but she was fine now. And then she offered little cups of popcorn, not just to the children, but even to the I can draw a diagram of this machine person who was unable to return it to health. Everyone thankfully clustered around her smiling face. The children were almost screaming thankfulness, and Anna and Judy left my side. All the grown-ups were sharing vocal relief except the dejected man holding a scrap of paper bearing a diagram. When our hero in overalls asked him, he explained he couldn't understand. Years ago, he had worked out the diagram from this very steam engine, and repeating himself, he had taught it for 5 years to his classes every spring. He just couldn't understand. As she approached him, she reassured him that it was probably a fine diagram, but that this engine was this engine, with its own singular quirks. It is not a materialization of the diagram hidden inside all possible steam engines. The diagram is simply sometimes helpful, sometimes unhelpful. But the diagram is not what makes the engine work or not work. If the steam engine works, it's because of countless tiny adjustments that she knows how to make, because she has given her attention affectionately to this very machine for many years. She was not concerned with a diagrammatic picture of a steam engine, which would more or less picture a host of other machines as well. But she said he could teach the diagram to his students. It was simply that this steam engine, and really no singularly aging steam engine, none is a diagram of itself. It is a singular changing material, and it needs our affection.
To the wife, it all sounded vaguely familiar, but all turned around or upside down. He always says that women are made this way, and men are made that way, so there is nothing to do but serve as a housewife should serve. And though he knows nothing of biology, he is always talking about evolution, and the hidden essences of women, which would break down if she received wages for her housework, or her sex work, or her therapeutic work. That is what a loving wife is. The hidden essence is what makes her a woman. After reading Nothing's Hidden, I realized he only thought that the essence of woman was hidden because the women around him behaved in a certain way. So it should have no power to control her behavior. What women do does not show us what women should do. She can do anything she can do. She's a real thing, not a diagram of herself. And her life as a wife was not required by the diagram of her life. It was forced on her by thousands of small occasions in daily life, with him and with all the rest of them. Like the thousands of small adjustments the hero in blue jeans put to good effect in healing the steam engine. All the rest of them, and he too, had made thousands of small adjustments, tiny microscopic buffetings and tiny microscopic beckonings, to lure her to imitate the diagram of the perfect wife, and to punish her for being imperfect. But there is nothing hidden, no diagram. It is merely a mnemonic so he can remember how to silence my arguments, an imaginary stick to control the actual me. Our hero in blue jean overalls attended affectionately to the steam engine. That is how she was able to coax it back to health. But he only cares about his control, and there is no affection. His only skill is the controlling force he uses to keep me in my place, the only place he can imagine for me. His favored hierarchy of man and woman is the supposedly hidden diagram, not the requirements of my life, or the requirements of anyone's life. But nothing's hidden. We can say and do anything. But the punishment comes. Standing behind the microscopic buffeting is a bigger one. I am still limping and can't figure a way out. What map did the hero in overalls use? Sitting back, I started playing with the envelope gifts. I spun the ring on the table and felt the smooth of the stick against my lips. Whose pocket had worn this little stick so smooth? When I turned over the last page of the cider mill story, there were 2 quotations. This time accredited to a name I recognized, Gertrude Stein. I heard she wrote repetitively, which sounded absurd, and that she lived with another woman, which sounded like a relief. The first was this.
Now, what we know is formed in our head by thousands of tiny occasions in daily life. By what we know, I do not mean, of course, what we learn from books, because that is of no importance at all. I mean what we really know, like our assurance about how we know anything and what we know about the validity of sentiments and things like that.
No wonder this was on the back of the cider mill story. The second one.
The only thing that is different from one time to another is what is seen, and what is seen depends upon how everybody is doing everything.
Those thousands of tiny occasions are how everybody is doing everything. It's not what we read in books or the theories they teach us. We are buffeted and beckoned by thousands of little occasions, microscopic urgings and microscopic refusals. Buffeted and beckoned, and they enforce what we think we can and can't do, and what thoughts are absurd or not. It's a non-bloody control which we barely notice, until the violence becomes bloody. Then it is too clear. I could do anything, and yet I can't do anything else. I sleepwalk at night so much, and when I am awake, it's hardly different. Fanning the pages of the reporter's book of quotations and comments, I find the name Clarice Lispector. What a lovely name. I look at the quotation.
Had he ever really been intelligent? The truth is, he thought and exclaimed to himself, the truth is I just imitated intelligence the way I could swim like a fish without being a fish. The man stirred contented, imitated, but yes, because by imitating whatever it would mean to come in first in the statistics exam, he had come in first in the statistics exam. The truth is, he then concluded, very interested, he had just imitated intelligence with that essential lack of respect that makes a person imitate. And along with him, millions of men who are copying with great effort the idea they had of a man, alongside thousands of women who are copying attentively the idea they had of a woman, and thousands of people of goodwill who are copying with superhuman effort their own faces and the idea of existing, not to mention the anguished concentration with which they were imitating acts of good and evil with daily care, not to slide into some act that was really true, and yet incomparable, and yet inimitable, and yet disconcerting.
Looking up, I thought how much of my life was an attempted imitation of a perfect host, a perfect wife, a perfect flight attendant, and yet it felt merely theatrical and dangerous, because the criticism of my performance comes not in newspapers, but often with blows and bruises. And they too, though the bruises hurt, were also theater, his theater, imitating the idea he had of a man. It is all so much more obvious and hopeless after violence. There was a stray fragment on the same page.
Incarnating his own logic.
Were we each picking up the logic, the patterns of our lives, and then incarnating them in our own lives? There is the pattern, and there we are living it as though it were our script. But beyond those patterns, what could I do? How could I know? I thought of a child at the start of a new life, playing. There was more from Clarice Lispector, too.
Discomfort is the only warning that we are copying. And we listen to ourselves attentively beneath the sheets, but we're so distanced by our imitation that whatever we hear comes to us without sound. as if it were a vision that were so invisible, as if it were the darkness that was so compact that hands were no use, because even comprehension the person is imitating, the comprehension that had never been made of anything but someone else's language and words. But there was still disobedience.
I said the word out loud. Disobedience. Absent-mindedly, I turned the page of the notebook of quotations, and there, in the middle of a page, all by itself, a single little sentence.
I would prefer not to.
I felt like the envelope and Bridget were working their own magic. It was a potion for me. The nose was hilarious at the gossips with her three sisters. They knew the lines, and they knew they were deadly serious, but the red nose freed them. It was a triumph of play over seriousness, of proper and improper. The red nose brought them like children beyond good and evil. The three sisters knew something. They knew not to fight with the diagram. The hidden diagram of our lives was made to win its battles. But there is nothing hidden. There are no rules. Criticism is hopeless. The direct attack is fruitless. Is eccentricity an oblique escape? I never liked competition. But oh, I did love swimming, stretching out my body long and liquid in the sea, the waves lifting and settling, even, especially in the nearly storm when the white horses are everywhere. I love the sea. I might be a selkie, but one who found out where her abductor hid her skin. Wild, free playing without rules, nothing like chess or board games. I never liked competition, winning or losing, but I loved playing around with my nieces on the floor, making toys out of anything. Store-bought toys themselves offer only one thing perfectly, but my nieces played louder, longer, and more beautifully with boxes and wrappings. Around children, everyone knows this, but when the grown-ups arrive, we forget. I looked at my watch, tore a sheet from where the shopping lists were, and wrote something then, slowly at first, but then the words pouring out of me. He shouldn't be home for at least an hour. Carefully, I put all the things back in the envelope, the notebook, the ring. It was hard to make them fit, so I eased them out to compact them, and I found, for the first time, stuck in the bottom of the envelope, a faded little red foam nose. When everything was back inside, taped closed, tied up again with butcher's twine, I walked up to the attic, found the extra pocket inside the fur coat, and returned the envelope home. A car was coming into the driveway, and, like a child, I skipped lightly down the back stairs. I smiled thanks for Bridget, and the hero in overalls, and the three sisters all nosed red, laughing at the foolishness of perfection. Those stories showed me who my real people were, and I would recognize them now, as they would recognize me. As I crossed obliquely through the neighbor's garden and into the alley, I thought I could smell cornbread, and hoped it was sludgy. Thank you.